Now I'm going to tell you a story. This story describes loss and sadness. It is a story of determination and perseverance. It is a story of strength and hope. Through this story, I will explain my inspiration and ultimate decision to become a future educator. As a child, I remember my father telling me his tales and adventures of his life, the hardships he faced, along with the happiness he found. Francisco Regino was born December 24th, 1964, at a small pueblo or town named Hidalgo, Nuevo León. My father was born in a complicated household composed of many stepbrothers and stepsisters. His stepfather loved him so much that he gave him his last name, Regino. My absent paternal grandfather, who he only met once as a small child, was never really involved in my father's life. My dad lived in poverty during his childhood. His stepfather worked as an agricultural worker, while his mother would wash clothing by hand to make a living. When my father was 9 years old, his mother passed away due to an unknown illness. Around the age of 10, my father's youngest brother, Martin, died. At the age of 15, Francisco's stepfather soon followed. With the authority figures gone, Francisco's older stepbrothers and sisters went their separate ways and in a sense abandoned him. Growing up, my father learned to value work because work meant his next meal. He would tell me stories of skipping school to go fishing because fishing literally meant he wouldn't starve to death. He only reached the 4th grade when he quit school and started roaming around the streets causing trouble and landing with bad company. In hopes for a better life, around the age of 20, Francisco swam across the Rio Grande River and illegally entered the United States. From what he told me, it took many failed attempts to illegally cross, but something kept making him return. It was that hope and desire to seek opportunities unimaginable to him, to seek a better future for himself. He remembers hanging on from below the train on to travel from state to state, dangerously clutching the machinery while it moved at top speeds, making sure his arms and legs didn't touch the moving train wheels. He still remembers the voices of the officers and the barks of the police dogs that would smell into the trains to inspect and detain any unwelcomed passengers. He remembers fearing and praying to not be caught, to continue on his journey. In the United States, he worked as an undocumented migrant worker. I've contemplated on my life as well as my family's history, and I simply couldn't think of a better representation other than my father's calloused hands. What better proof is there for a lifetime of hard work as a migrant worker? Years of working under the blazing sunshine have caused the deep crevices to crack the skin of my father's exhausted hands. This moment right here, the simple touch of my father's aching hands, reminds me and will always be proof of my family's hardships, our struggles, and our determinations. His body might be in ruins, simply put. He is an old rusted truck who somehow still manages to keep igniting and maintaining a sight of a bright, luxurious future, known to many as the American dream. In 1986, Ronald Reagan signed the Immigration Reform and Control Act, making immigrants who arrived in the United States before 1982 eligible for amnesty. With this act, Francisco Regino officially became a United States citizen. My experience growing up is extremely different than my father's. It is because of my father's sacrifices and the hardships of the struggles before him, of the people who came before him, that I am who I am now. As a child, I struggled to balance my two identities. Now, however, I proudly represent both. My first language, was Spanish. In fact, I didn't formally learn English until the 4th grade in elementary school. I was born and raised in Longmont, Colorado until the age of 10 when we embarked on our journey to South Texas. It all started when my father was laid off due to an injury he attained while working. At the age at that time, my mother struggled to keep us afloat, paying medical bills along with any other expenses. Eventually, my parents had to declare foreclosure. My parents decided to start over with a fresh start in Texas, closer to our relatives in Mexico. Most of our belongings were donated or given away. Everything had to go because we could only take a very limited amount. This experience humbled me greatly. I learned to value my family and their health over any materialistic items and valuables. In a sense, we were rich with love and unity rather than with money. I remember my mother telling me, "They can take everything away from you, but the one thing they can't is your education and the love for your family." When we arrived in Texas, life was completely different, and I threw myself in my education, now fully understanding the value of an education to succeed in life. While in South Texas, I was exposed to an unknown community of division between generations and their culture, their language, and their identity. I saw parents only wanting to teach their children English and unintentionally creating a barrier between old and new generations. A part of my experience growing up included my mother and my father keeping us in bilingual programs to keep and nourish our first language. Texas, however, has no such thing as bilingual programs for children, only programs designed for English immersion. There are no dual language programs where children are enabled to diversely learn the value of two languages and cultures, therefore forming a unique identity. There was also a shift in learning. The focus for teachers was now a direct approach to learning the exam rather than allowing the students to explore new worlds and gain a curiosity for learning new things. And yet, through it all, I persevered and pushed through. My primary goal to make my family proud. I am now blessed to attend St. Edward's University through the College Assistance Migrant Program, a federal and private program designed to help the students of children of migrant farm workers in our country gain a higher level of education. Camp is a major part of my life experience, and it has opened doors to new opportunities that wouldn't have been available elsewhere. While at St. Edward's last spring semester, I volunteered through Serve Austin and gained many skills that enabled me to choose my future profession. Every Wednesday for an entire spring semester, I would go to El Buen Samaritano, a nonprofit institution. I specifically helped Mr. Santana, the Assistant Family Literacy Coordinator, with adult illiterate Spanish native speakers, learn Spanish while also teaching English to adult English learners. Serve Austin has equipped me with first-hand experience in teaching and has inspired my future career as a bilingual educator. My mother and father themselves learned English as adults in a nonprofit institution in Colorado. Education is an essential motivation that has helped my family succeed, and I want to preserve that blessing and give back to the world by teaching English and Spanish. My primary goal is to help children learn a love for languages and diversity, to let them see that just because the dominant language is English in the United States doesn't mean they have to completely forget their cultural roots and their native language. This is a picture of my little brother learning to read in both English and Spanish, pointing at words and teaching my father early before school starts in a cafeteria. It makes me feel determined and proud of my background and my experiences growing up. helping children form their unique identities, and allowing them to grow in an inclusive environment. Through love for diversity and languages is my passion and overall my teaching journey.